Good morning, everyone. So today is April 21st, and as usual, we have the developer meeting. So today we have a bunch of demos put into the agenda, plus a few news. So if you would like to discuss any topic, please put them on the agenda. So let me screen share. Yeah. Somebody is typing and it's quite loud. Okay, so regarding our news, so the first big news is that Keptn incubation, we started the public comment period. So just to explain what it means, starting from now, everyone in the community has 2 weeks to comment on the proposal. And if there is no negative comments, etc., we can proceed with the incubating stage so the TOC can make a decision. It can be done at the next meeting in the beginning of May, or it can be done synchronously. So thanks a lot to everyone who was involved in reviews, discussions, and of course features, roadmap, and everything that we needed to provide in the due diligence document. Because the fact that we are considered for incubation is of course a result of all the work put in Keptn in the recent years. And yeah, thanks everyone. So if you want to review, etc., there is still some time, but yeah, generally we just wait for the wider community. So the TACAP delivery has already reviewed. We did 2 presentations for them in the recent quarter. There was a discussion and joint review of the due diligence document. So now we wait just for the TOC and whomever else wants to participate. So congrats. And yeah, at KubeCon, I believe that there will be some celebration, and hopefully we will be able to have something else later this year. So maybe in Austria, who knows? So it's something I'm about working on. Okay, on the other news, so Google Summer of Code. On Tuesday, the application period was over. So what I can share, we got 15 proposals from potential contributors for a number of projects, including major ones we posted aligned with the Keptn roadmap. So it's a good number for us. This year, most likely we'll have so the moonshot is something like 4 projects, because we are the first year organization, and usually they just give 2 slots, maybe 3 slots, but not more. Let's see how many we request. So currently all mentors will be reviewing the proposals, and we will come up with mentorship teams, etc. And I might be reaching to a few contributors just to find extra mentors for projects when we need, for example, special expertise in Keptn, in integrations. So please be ready to that. Okay, so, and that's it from me. Any other news you would like to discuss? Thank you. So we can proceed with common agenda. And yeah, so we have a discussion for CAP 70 today, but Thomas is a bit late, so he is currently looking for the meeting booth. So we decided to put it to the end of the agenda, and we can proceed with the demos. And the first one is Florian.
All right, thank you. You should see my screen now.
Yep.
And I'm here myself, so I have to turn down the volume. So you know the drill by now. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them after I've presented my issues. All right, so the first pull request I want to show you was a little fix for the shipyard controller / configuration service. So basically what we discovered was that when a service was to be deleted via the shipyard controllers, API. Then in one case, we found a scenario where the directory representing that service was already gone from the configuration service or from the upstream Git repository. And that led to a state where, basically the MongoDB collection with all the project information still had the service in there because the shipyard controller didn't proceed with deleting the service. But on the other hand, in the Git repository, the service wasn't there anymore. And this led to a situation where the service couldn't be recreated anymore. And this has been fixed with this little pull request here. So should be a really small one. So basically what happens there is exactly, so here in the shipyard controller, we try to delete the service directory from the configuration service or configuration store as it's called here. And then now we do the distinction if we get an error from the configuration service, but that error is a service not found because it's not there anymore, then in that case, we'll still proceed with deleting the service from the database, and then we end up with a consistent state again. But in any other error cases, we keep the previous behavior we had and do not proceed with deleting it. All right, then the next one was for the shipyard controller. So the title is here, events not being processed completely during upgrade. So basically what does that mean? So during an upgrade, when you install a new Keptn version, for example, eventually the old pod of the shipyard controller will receive the SIG term signal. And there we, of course, we will have the termination race period and the pre-stop hook in place to give it enough time to handle any HTTP requests it's currently handling. But one thing we noticed is that since they also have this component that is connected to NUTS and periodically pulls events from NUTS or from Jetstream, there we had the potential problem that it was pulling the events right until the end where it was terminated. And there it could be the case that events are not fully processed. So when an event is pulled right before it's killed, then it might end up in an inconsistent state. And to avoid that, we made the following pull request, which, by the way, needs a review still. So basically, what did I do here? So when I received the SIG term signal in the shipyard controller, this will then immediately invoke the cancel function for the which will then be propagated to the periodically running component. So it's actually the NUTS connection that regularly pulls events, but also the sequence and event dispatcher. So those will then immediately get the information, okay, we've received the SIG term. Please do not attempt to do any new posts or any dispatching in order to not have the situation where anything is incompletely processed. And then eventually, once the new instance of the shipyard controller is up and running, that will then, of course, pick up and also handle any events that might have been sent to Keptn in the meantime. So we will, of course, not have any lost events there. All right, and then, third pull request. So this was for the resource service. So what has been done here? So basically, we added the insecure skip TLS option. So this was actually provided previously with a different name that was specific to the SSH feature actually. But since, of course, you might also want to be able to skip the TLS certificate verification for HTTPS communication as well, that has been renamed properly to kind of reflect the this option being general for both HTTPS and SSH. And now with the resource service, if you want to connect to an upstream repository that has a self-signed certificate, for example, you can now do so by setting this option to true when updating the project's upstream credentials. All right, I think that's all from my side. So now I will turn up my volume again. And if there are any questions, please go ahead. All right, if there are no questions, I will hand over to Moritz.
Yep, thank you. Let me find the right window to share here. That's the one. Okay, so I also have one pull request to show off today. It's about upgrading our MongoDB to the latest, or yeah, to a more current version actually. So the V11 actually refers to the Helm chart version and not the actual MongoDB version in this case. This was a major bump in the versions, but only for the chart itself and not for MongoDB. So it shouldn't have any big influence on Keptn itself. We had to change a few other things. As you can see, we updated the air-gapped helper scripts here to be able to still work with that. So as you can see, the new actual MongoDB version was bumped from 4.4.9 to 4.4.13. Yeah, and there were some other updates where the MongoDB chart that we're using here actually changed. So there's now MongoDB passwords in plural compared to previously the singular. So they added some new features where you could basically set up multiple databases on startup with multiple users and passwords. We are not using that in Keptn specifically. So in the end, if you check the values file, the database here was now changed to a list, but it still only has the one entry that we need, which is the Keptn database. And the same goes for the usernames here. So there were some slight changes in our chart as a result of this upgrade, but it should all be fine now. Yeah, same with the passwords as well. So the secrets here have a different value inside now, a different key actually, different key, same value. So yeah, this PR was quick in implementation and slow in testing, since we have so many options in our Helm chart and different installation methods with the CLI and with the Helm chart directly and stuff like that. So this mostly involved manual testing in this case. And that's already it from me. That's the only PR I have to show off today. And that's it. And now we're actually going over to the discussion about CAP 70. Since Thomas is already here now, I guess.
Thomas is here, and he has a conflict at 10:30. Hence, we jumped in and added this item to the agenda now. I can start first of all sharing my screen and then talk about the CAP 70, which is an old one. I think you cannot see my screen. I think I discussed it or mentioned it already couple weeks ago, where I announced that we are planning to work on the feature of adding and removing stages to and from a project. And well, this is the basic idea. and a request from the community for a long time now. And it's really straightforward. And what the title already says, it's about adding a new stage to an already existing project. Here I have an example where I have my dev hardening and two prod environments. And with this new feature, it should then be possible that we create a new stage, for example, in between dev and hardening. This would be the chaos stage, for example. And then it should be also possible to add a new stage in parallel to another one. This would be the quality assurance stage in this given example. Well, the basic idea is, I think, pretty straightforward. But what happened in the last couple of weeks is a discussion around this topic, and actually a discussion about the way we as Keptn are using the internal Git repository. And here, with the help of Andreas, Giovanni, and Markus Lagner, we have created a comparison overview of the two approaches that can be applied. And on the one hand, we have the current branch-based way of storing artifacts in the repository, and on the other side, we have the folder-based way of storing artifacts. I note that in the resource service, we already have an implementation available that allows us to switch to a folder-based structure. But with this comparison overview, we want to make sure that we are really heading towards the right direction and explain the disadvantages and advantages of both approaches so that we can then conclude a meaningful opinion, and then also have some ways of argumenting the decision we made. And please take a look at this table. It clearly shows that the branch-based structure of storing configuration has disadvantages, and in effect will block us for adding new use cases on top of that. And at the end, it will become more challenging when we stay with the current way of storing configuration and when we don't do the switch over to the folder-based structure. For example, we see it also in other tools like Customize or Helm, that the folder-based way of storing configuration is already kind of future proven, so to say, and also shows value, as Customize is doing it this way, as well as Helm also allows to structure Helm charts based on folders. And at the end, it also gives us a possibility that we can start to think of actually replacing Git as artifact store by another storage, like a blob storage or also a file storage, because then we are not relying on Git tooling anymore and just use basic functionalities like creating a folder, deleting a folder, and moving files around. And this would, as I said before, help us to also then think about new use cases we can build on top of this approach then. And what we at the end concluded was the decision that adding and removing stages requires the switch to the new model. It will be necessary that we switch to folder-based approach. Otherwise, we would have quite a lot of technical debt, which is very difficult to handle in the future. All right. So far, is everything clear, or are there already questions regarding CAP 70?
Yeah, so for me, the main question is timeline, because we have dependencies on this cap if we approach it this way. So what would be the feasible timeline?
About the timeline, I can't say when it will be available, because what we currently have in the box or in plan or are working on is all about the zero downtime upgrade capabilities, as they have higher prio and will be finished or will be finished first. And once that is done, we can start to think of working on that topic.
Mhm.
But updates on the timeline I can give you in a couple of weeks when it
Mhm.
comes to implementation.
Yeah, and I guess basically the timeline would be still at least 2 deliverables. So first of all, support for folders. And
Right.
the good question is whether we can keep compatibility. So basically supporting both branch mode as now and folders.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is topic we need to discuss seriously, maybe in a separate cap, because for me it seems that folder support is actually bigger than well, I think removing stages is bigger too, but yeah, maybe we need to split to 2 topics.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Mhm.
We had this discussion, yeah, in the last week, but now I'm also thinking of splitting this cap in 2 or actually 3 parts, because Thomas also brought up a very interesting point, yeah, in this comment, and in a discussion with Thomas, we then summarized it, yeah, this way. And Thomas, are you on the call? I would like.
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Okay. Do you, would you like to add a few words regarding the versioning topic?
So I watched the topic and I can hear myself somewhere. So I watched the whole topic and the cap around this, and I found out that the use case we're dealing with and so on might break other things where workarounds around some things are already built. So when you think of continuous delivery or delivery in general, you don't want to deal with git commits of the upstream repository because you as a developer, you don't know them. And the only thing you want to do as a developer is you want to deliver a particular version of your service. And this is a thing which cannot be achieved by our current resource service and also not via our current configuration service. So Keptn itself needs to get some kind of awareness of versions that we can say, yes, we want to deliver the service let's say webhook service in the version 0.1 on the stage dev. And therefore we need to rethink our Git approach in the upstream repository, because the thing we are doing there is not GitOps. So the repository there doesn't have, so the master of the repository, or the main branch of this, doesn't have to be the source of truth. So in my opinion, the upstream repository is more an artifact store than a GitOps repository. And therefore, we need some version awareness there. And we need to store the artifacts version, but otherwise need to be able to retrieve the artifacts in a versioned way. And yes, when you take a look on the whole cap and the comments of Johannes and me, you'll see kind of approaches how to get there. And yes, I think this is also a thing we need to rethink in another enhancement proposal. But it's also, in my opinion, it's a prerequisite for adding or removing stages to a project to clarify this, because currently we are building our data structure based on Git on the Git repository, not on metadata or database entries. And I think currently exactly this fact blocks us from implementing the stages, and therefore I think this is a prerequisite for everything.
You're muted, Jan.
Johannes, you're muted.
You can hear me. Thanks, Thomas, for adding your thoughts on that topic. Yeah, as said before, this is now, or turned out to be now, a bigger chunk of work which needs to be split into different parts. The one part is switching to a folder-based approach, then allowing or bringing in version awareness for artifacts, and then last but not least, implementing the capability of adding and removing a stage. And I would now proceed we need to separate these 3 topics into different Keptn enhancement proposals, and we keep you updated on the progress on those topics. If there are no urgent questions on that topic, I would.
No questions
there
on
one?
this topic. I sent a follow-up message to Slack about GitOps deep dive. So I suggest doing a kind of public meeting for GitOps working group, and I can help with hosting it. I mean, GitOps operator working group. Does it work for you, Johannes and Thomas?
Yes, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Works for me.
sometime next week or more time? What would be your preference?
Next week would work from my point of view.
Also from my point of view.
Okay, so I will get to do the layout, etc., etc.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
If no further questions, I would proceed in the agenda and would like to hand over to Klaus.
Thanks. Let me share my screen. Okay, so let's go to the bridge side. The first issue that was bring up by Georg was the subscription page. There we have the filter for stages, services, stages and services. And the problem was that this one was not updated, so only on refresh. So it was rather a feature than a fix. So that we add the polling here. So if we add a new service now, let's call it for example, then within, I guess, 30 seconds or so, this filter is updated and the new service shows up. Yeah, let's go back to that, or wait 30 seconds. Yeah, then you see the new service shows up here. And also if you select something and delete the service, this one is then removed from the filter. Any questions to that fix or feature? If not, I will go to the next one. This was also a fix for incorrect selected stage in the sequence screen. So this was that one. So if you are in a specific sequence and selected an event, then also the deep link is adjusted. But on refresh, there was a problem that then the wrong stage, it was always the latest, the last stage, was selected instead of the right stage. So if you refresh now, the right stage is selected and the right event is expanded. Previously, production was selected and this was the screen presented instead. Yeah, and this has been fixed now. Questions to that? If not, I will go to the next issue. This is the sequence selection. So for a trigger sequence, previously there was the case if you select a custom sequence, it did not matter in which stage it was. So it just failed, I guess. And now if you select a stage, for example, hardening, then you only see the sequences that are defined in the hardening stage. And if you then select, for example, production, then you see there is no custom sequence for production, but only the ones that are defined for the specific stage. And as you can see, this selection drop down is also moved here. Previously, it was on the next page. And this is now moved here. So the next page just contains the labels and that's it. Maybe another thing to mention here, just a small change for the evaluation. we switched the order of start, at, and time frame here because it was a bit, yeah, not aligned with the start and end time, because start was on the right side and for start and end time it was on the left side, and now it is aligned to be on the same side. Yeah, that was that feature. The next one was the sequence screen with the waiting state. So previously the waiting state was just guessed more likely by the front end, and now the correct state, waiting state, is considered for waiting, and also for the status, the waiting status is added here. So if I for example, I trigger a new sequence, and then again, this one is in waiting, and also the filter works for waiting. And this is now not an assumption, it's the real waiting state that is being taken from the object, from the endpoint. So yeah, that's for that. Any questions to that? If not, then
Yes, I would have a question.
Yes.
Do we still have here the paging? So for example, if the 20 events which you are showing does not contain the waiting event.
Yeah, we still filter it locally instead of another API call. So if there is a waiting, but it is the 26th or something of the sequences, the latest, then it is not shown because the filter is currently just on client side. So this is not implemented yet. So did you mean this or something else? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? If not, then I will hand over to Andre.
Thanks. I'll share my screen. So hopefully you're receiving and seeing. Please confirm. Yep. So yeah, so the first issue was regarding implementation of the new V1 beta webhook config version support. It was kind of a bigger change, but we actually will support also the old versioning, so the Alpha 1 webhook config version. The main difference between the alpha and the beta versions are within the requests object, where in the alpha version, as you can see, the curl commands, which should be executed by the webhook service on some kind of event, are defined just as a string. But in the new beta 1 version, they are defined as an object, where you can define the URL, method, headers, and some other stuffs, which you can see in this ticket. That means the URL, method, some headers, payloads, and options, where the required parameters are just the URL and the method. As I said, we will support both versions for some time, but I think in a couple of months we won't support the Alpha 1 versions anymore. The reason why the Beta 1 version was implemented is due to make it easier for the user to create the curl requests, and also for us to make the parsing and evaluation of the curl requests much more effective and convenient. So yeah, the second issue was fixing the MongoDB connection issues. We experienced some connection issues due to reaching the max pool size of the connections, where the new connections were not created, and that led to not able to connect to the MongoDB database, which was actually the knife of service, as Keptn cannot work without the database. The problem was mainly in the shipyard, where actually the connection to the MongoDB is handled as a singleton instance. And we were also, the first problem was that we were missing blocking of the mutex of the connection. So actually multiple threads were able to access the singleton instance at once and try to connect, which resulted to the unexpected behavior. That was the first piece of the problem. The second piece was when, due to some reason, the connection was dead and the instance tried to reconnect. We were missing a disconnection before the reconnection to the MongoDB database. That was the second problem. And also the third problem was that after connecting to the MongoDB database, we were not checking if the connection is live, or we experienced some kind of problem. So it was necessary to ping the existing connections after connecting the client to the database. So the ping was necessary, and if the ping failed, we should return an error. We now return an error, and if the ping succeeded, so we now know that the connection is live and valid, then we just the connection is established and the user can work, or the service can work with the connection. Yeah, actually that's everything from my side in the last 2 weeks. Are there any questions?
Maybe I chime in, not as for a question, but more for a clarification to the community. We wanted to backport this in all version 14, 13, and 12, but there were some issue with GitHub in releasing the images, so we were not able to do that, and we will do that as soon as possible. So this connection leak problem will be fixed in version 12, 13, 14, and in master.
Thank you for adding this. So probably no questions, so I'm handing over to Ermin.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm going to present some pull requests for the bridge that I did. The first one is about OAuth and error handling. The issue was that with OAuth, when you get a 403 or a 401 response, the user saw 2 error messages. First one was about insufficient permissions, or that he will be redirected for login. And the second one was a generic request failed with status code error message. And yeah, that was aligned here so that the error message is just displayed once, and also made sure yeah, that for multiple calls, the 401 is just displayed one, and the user is then redirected to the login page correctly. Yeah, that's the first one. The second one is we format the date time for triggering a sequence now in a user-friendly way. So previously, when the user selected for triggering a sequence, an evaluation sequence, the start and end date, the date input would use the local time, but then the displayed value would be UTC date format, which is also then sent to the API. And this is now fixed so that on the user side, you see your local time in the input field, and to the API, we still send the correct UTC value. This is still open because I'm struggling with some UI tests, but this should be merged.
I have a question for this ticket, sorry.
Yes.
In the screenshot, the format is hours and minutes, but in the PR title it says also seconds should be there. Which of
Yes,
the two
this
version has been implemented?
this is an old screenshot. I will update that one. This
Okay.
is the updated version, since with the selection, you can also select the seconds. So we also display the seconds
Okay.
there.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. And the third PR I'm going to present is rendering HTML in notifications. Actually, this was already supported, and we dropped that with the OAuth error handling because, yeah, we thought that we are not rendering any HTML in notifications, actually, but there are still some cases where we might get a response from the server, for example, with HTML content, and therefore we added the support for rendering that correctly again. And what we also did is actually we sanitize, and that's the actual part of this feature. We sanitize the content with security context HTML. Yeah, just to make sure that no scripts are injected there or things like that. Yeah. That's all from my side. If there are no questions, then I'm handing over to Anna.
Thank you. I'm sharing my screen. So I have 3 tiny things. The first one is I worked on the cleaning up the resource service. We had a few problems from Klaus regarding endpoint. So at the beginning we had that deleting was not possible anymore because we were not properly escaping the slash in the path of the resource. This is now working fine, and the delete is returning a 200 code. Project also was not, project stage and service endpoint were not returning any metadata. No, metadata was wrongly formatted, which was fixed. And then it was not returning metadata after post and put, which now it is returned with the current version, which is exactly the same as the commit ID. And the branching is currently not having metadata, but we are gonna deprecate the branching, and the URL is already containing the information, so that is kept. Also, we are returning now metadata for full resources, which was faulty before we had all of the metadata resources empty. Finally, there was a change in the post, delete, and put of the API that now are again deprecated. And what else? Yeah, there was an endpoint which was under the wrong resource that was moved, and finally we are not returning a 500 status but a 400 in case of wrong Git credential. So yeah, that's it for this one. And also about the resource service, there was another one which is concerning the user. So basically, recently we had a change in the CLI and in the bridge where we can add a Git upstream repository without the user if we are using a token on HTTP. And the resource service was failing because it didn't have any default user. This was a fairly simple change. It was just adding a default user, and that will work fine with what already we have. And then finally, fix in our integration tasks. There were 2 integration tasks sometimes randomly failing. One of them was the URL provisioning, and that is because during the URL provisioning task, we were deleting the shipyard pods a couple of times, and we were not waiting for it to be back up. So sometimes we could have some timing issue. And another task that was fixed in this PR was the Git commit ID In here, we were sending at the same time a start event and the finished event from SLI. And this we know that right now Shipyard may not handle this properly if the finished event arrives before the started event. So for now, this was fixed with a simple slip. And yeah, that's it probably from this PR. If there are no questions, I think now Surah has something.
Yeah, so there was a question in help, but yeah, I missed that because of GSOC deadlines. So the question was about handling the events on the receiver side. I mean, due to whatever reason, SLA provider for Datadog doesn't subscribe to the desired events. So if somebody is familiar with how SLI providers work, what are the APIs, defaults, etc., it would be nice if you could comment there on Slack.
Thank you for summarizing that, Oleg.
Mhm.
So basically, it's either me doing something stupid or we have a bug. I think that's what you want to figure out, and I don't really know how to proceed from here. So just a little help could help. That is one, and other one is I'm testing out Datadog Datadog service with Keptn. So any user feedback or if someone would like to try it out, I think that would be great help to me. I did try it out locally, but I wanted to try it out with a HTTP metric, HTTP response time metric, but it's not working for some reason locally. I reached out to Datadog and I haven't received any response from them. So the only way I guess to do it would be to try it out in a live cluster. And I don't want to create a live cluster if I could help it. So this is like more of a request. If someone has a live cluster running, really help me to try it out, or just try it out on your local laptop, because it might just be that my machine is broken. So if anybody has time, I'd really appreciate it. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay, so I think we need to take it offline if nobody has immediate ideas what's wrong. And yeah, I'll do my best to help. So thanks a lot for bringing up this topic, and thanks everyone for the presentations. Are there any topics to cover today? Yeah. Maybe later we could discuss about how we could make demos more visible. Because yeah, maybe we could just let's say every time we do a major release, let's 0.15, maybe we could record demos of key features we deliver, maybe as a separate session or maybe as a developer meeting. Or I could just go and truncate these videos from the recordings and prepare a new video, because I think that it would be really nice to highlight what's happening in the Keptn project. We have a lot of great demos here, but yeah, until we get channel membership and we can highlight particular demos on YouTube, it's very hard to discover particular feature presentations. Okay. So let's take a look. Okay. And speaking of 0.15, what is ETA for that?
Should be around the end of the month.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it's something we could try together. So if you want to highlight particular features, deliverables, if you send me this information maybe 1 week in advance, I can just go through these demo recordings, etc., and prepare the video we could publish.
Okay, I will think about what we could highlight.
Yeah. Okay. Or I can just at timestamps and point to existing videos. But yeah, currently we are just very limited by YouTube functionality. If you get maybe a tenfold more followers, it will be much easier. But yeah, let's keep working on that. Okay. So then, thanks everyone, and yeah,
Thanks, everyone.
bye.
Bye bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye bye.